Welcome to the webcast by Consider Solutions on the topic S/4HANA, the next frontier for the SAP-enabled business. First, I want to introduce to you today's presenters. First of all, I'm very pleased that I'm joined today by Sean Snap, well-renowned SAP researcher and analyst and founder of Brightworks. I will introduce Sean a bit later. I want to say good morning, Sean, and welcome. The agenda for today is as follows. We will start with the reason we started this webcast at all, and we call that the big confusion. After that, we will go into the reality versus the marketing around both S/4HANA and HANA. Then to the topic which is close to our heart at Consider Solutions, that is the risk and control impact when you implement S/4HANA. And then we will go to some takeaways and an agenda for you, which you can use in your internal discussion, and close off with some thoughts for the road. And of course, at the end, we will try to answer any questions that you have, because this is an interactive webcast which will take about 45 minutes, and during those 45 minutes you can enter your questions via the panel on your screen, so please do so. Also, we will be asking a few polls to get to know you better and to get your ideas on some of the topics. And if we don't have time to answer all your questions, we will address them to you by email. So please ask questions. For those who don't know us, and that are quite a few in the list of attendees, a very brief introduction to Consider Solutions. We are a consulting organization that is helping large organizations on their journey to world-class finance, whereby we have a specific focus on what we depict with our little temple: financial control and compliance, risk assurance, and financial process optimization, but all supporting world-class finance and built on the foundation of IT and ERP enablement. And we do this for a large number of customers throughout the world. Some examples here. Probably you will recognize some of the household names, and we pride ourselves very lucky to have long-standing relationships with most of these organizations. And before going into the topic of today, I want to ask you 3 questions to get a bit of a background which kind of organization you represent. So first of all, what is your role? What is the role of your organization? And I have 5 options for you. Your organization is either an SAP end customer, is an IT service provider, is a business process outsourcer, or a consultancy organization, or other. Please check one of the 5 options, and I will give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 seconds for that. The interesting, oh yeah, that's a good spread. I can't say that there is a big majority. A big majority is, I think the largest group are the SAP end customers. Thank you for that. Let's go to poll number 2. What is the current usage of SAP in your organization? Again, 5 choices. SAP as the primary centralized ERP business system, or SAP ERP as your primary data hub with other surrounding applications, or you have a heterogeneous landscape, including SAP, or you have currently no SAP at all, or the question is not applicable. For instance, you are from a consulting organization. Please check one again, and I give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. And the results are showing quite a number of big spread. Interestingly enough, 8% no current SAP landscape yet. So some people that are contemplating to do that. And it is, I think, 48% in total that have a mixed landscape of whatever form. Thank you for that. And then the third poll. What is the size of your organization? I think the categories speak for themselves. If you could choose one, and then I give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Ooh, some very large organizations on the phone today, and the rest is a nice spread over the various categories. It seems that especially large organizations are interested in the topic. Thank you for that. That gives us a nice insight in our audience. So, why this webcast? Well, we call it the big confusion because in talking to our customers and other relations around the world, we noticed that there is a lot of confusion around the topic of HANA and S4HANA. And I think the best way that is reflected in the vast audience we have for this webcast, and a lot of people already saying, sorry, can't join, but I'm interested in the results of it. So confusion on various angles, and that's the reason why I tried to merge some of the observations that we did in 3 different angles. First of all, the angle of the HANA confusion itself. If you go on the web, you will find very colorful pictures, a lot of them a repetition or copied by people out of the SAP ecosystem, or coming stemming from marketing within that ecosystem or SAP itself. They give little or limited detail or explanation, and sometimes they are quite inconsistent. I think copying is not always a good thing to do. So a lot of confusion about the HANA topic itself, and that is what Sean will address and enlighten us with some ideas on that. The second angle is what I call the market confusion. If you look to analysts and press, you see quite interesting observations. I've gathered 3 here, all quite recent ones. And if we go clockwise, start at the top. The first one is an example of what are we talking about type of confusion, what it is and what it isn't. And you only have to go to LinkedIn and to go to some of the LinkedIn groups around S4HANA and SAP in general, and you will see all kinds of questions. What is the difference between this and that? And you get a myriad of reactions, some correct, some less correct. The second element is the observation about the business value and organizations struggling with documenting that business value and taking a sound decision to invest, how to invest, and when to invest. And the third example at the bottom is comments about the adoption rate of S4HANA. S4HANA is now available for well over a year, and its predecessors even a bit longer. And there are mixed sounds on the adoption level from different sources. So confusion. And then last but not least, the third angle of confusion in the area that is close to our heart, the risk and controls area. You see different voices there. The SAP voices with a few technical statements and no guidelines or documents yet, so suggesting that maybe everything is all the same. The SAP ecosystem that is saying, well, get prepared, and we will help you, we will consult for you. Often an indication that it is quite early and maybe still a moving target. And the market, the wider market itself is utterly silent. Maybe because nobody has gone that far that they had to look seriously at risk and controls around S/4HANA. But it is amazing that there are relatively few blogs or comments, and that suggests no issues. I must say that in the last few weeks, the number of blogs is growing on the topic, but it is still very small compared to what we have seen in the past. And past is also a key word for me to say, well, we remember the impact on risk and controls when the move from R3 to ECC was made. And we expect that the move to S/4HANA will not be far different from that. So, when you're confused, what do you do? You ask the expert. So that is the reason that we got in contact with Sean Snap, who's a renowned researcher on SAP. And I like his authentic and unbiased statements. He's not tricked by marketing, and he's not sponsored by neither the SAP side of the world, the integrators, or the competition. And his observations are all fact-based and show practical relevance. And he does that based on a vast experience working with very renowned organizations and also in-depth technical knowledge of the SAP topic. So Sean, welcome again, and please give us your perspective on the confusion.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yes.
we had a slight delay. Sorry about that.
Yes. So one thing that Hans brought out that is kind of a foundational aspect to the work that I do and how this presentation should be interpreted is that if you look at most of the information in the marketplace regarding these two products, they are written about from entities that have a financial incentive in order to promote them. And so that, of course, brings in bias as to the actual validity of the claims. So just to let the people on the call know, all the information I provide, if everyone on the call tomorrow decided to go and buy these two products, it wouldn't make any difference to me. And if they were to decide not to buy the products, that also wouldn't make any difference to me. And so that is an important aspect to actually being able to follow a scientific approach as to what's true and what isn't true. So let's go to the next slide. So both of these products have received a massive marketing push from SAP, but there's been very close to no independent analysis on these two topics. I don't see the, not sure I see the next slide. There we go. So in this discussion, we'll cover an independent perspective on the application and on the database, and we'll get into some of the kind of common questions that are important to really have as an understanding before you can actually make good decisions on investing in either of the two of these. So let's go to the next slide. So we'll have some major themes that we're going to cover today. We'll have 5 themes we're going to cover for S/4HANA, and we'll have 5 that we'll cover for HANA. So let's start off with a very fundamental question, which is, why is HANA in the title of S4 in the first place? And this is interesting because I believe this is the first time that a database is actually in the name of the application. And if everyone on the call can sort of think through and try to determine if they can remember an example of that, but I don't remember one. And so we can say that this product is strangely named. So why is the database in the title of S4? So the reason for this is really several-fold. So one is that one of the major reasons is to emphasize that S4 really only works with HANA. And so that's quite well known that SAP has basically put all of its customers on notice, telling them that they'll be migrating to a new database platform if they decide to go to S4, which is, of course, what they're recommending. SAP also intends to use S4 to push to push Oracle out of supporting their ERP systems in the future. And it's not only the ERP system. SAP is also recommending that many other applications move to HANA. So this is not a, cannot be seen as an entirely objective recommendation on the part of SAP. This is obviously a way to increase business, to get more, to grow into the database space. So there are really many threads to discuss below this, but these are kind of important aspects as to first understanding, what is SAP's reasoning here. Okay, let's go to the second theme. So what is the difference between Simple Finance and S/4HANA? So to begin, most of the implementations globally with S/4HANA, and I'm actually currently researching this and have a paper coming out on it in a couple of weeks, have been in the finance area. This is the most mature of the modules within S/4HANA. So Simple Finance, which is now called just Finance, they've pretty much dropped the entire Simple, Run Simple program or marketing construct, is only one module. It was previously called FICO, and it is the only complete module inside of S/4HANA. So let's go to the next theme. So why is moving to S4 so different than previous SAP ERP upgrades? So first of all, S4 uses a different database, and there are very important implications to this. And actually, I don't think that these implications are very well explained in a lot of the literature around S4. So once a different database, which, to be more specific in terms of the implication here, is actually a different schema. And what this means is that the tables are entirely different than anything that came before. And so that means that the integrations, which eventually have to go into a table and push data into a table, that code that was created previously, put it into tables that now don't exist. And so that means that that has to be recoded. The customizations are the exact same thing. The customization eventually put information into an ECC table. That table has been removed, and other tables now take its place. So that's why this upgrade is so much different than any upgrade that any SAP customer has ever seen with R3 or ECC in the past. In addition, the functionality has been altered, and some of it has been removed. And so that means that if you rely on some of that functionality, you need to evaluate what are you going to do, as you won't be able to use that anymore, and the parts that have changed, you need to also evaluate, well, what does that mean for how we do business and how our process actually works. So what this sort of leads to is that this is the largest overhead of analysis that any SAP customer will have gone through when they migrate to S4. And so all the customizations must be fully analyzed, which is my theme here, the fourth theme. And there's really no reason to put this off until later, such as when S4 is implemented. So many people on this call have been on innumerable projects, and the further out you push this kind of analysis, especially when it's a significant change like this, typically the more problems you end up having. So at least if you can account for it, even if it's large, you can place that into the plan and make accommodations for it. If you don't do that, and if you work off of the construct of a previous ERP upgrade, then you're going to run into cost overruns and time overruns, and it's going to be a very stressful situation. So in the fifth theme, I move to what is the state of SAP's progress on S4? So there's a tremendous amount of curiosity in the marketplace regarding this. And it's a very complex question because the development of S4 is so different from previous SAP applications. So the development that SAP has moved to is an incremental approach where they develop parts of different modules. So let's say manufacturing or supply chain modules, which are part of what's called the overall EM or enterprise management suite, one cannot say that the entire module is complete. And so this means that that you need to go through and analyze what areas of functionality are complete and what is it that you rely on and how do those map to the complete parts, and what are the issues with the incomplete parts, and when can the incomplete parts expect to be completed. So again, S4 Finance is complete, but the functionality in different applications is in various forms of completeness. And this changes as time passes, as new versions are brought out. Okay, so now that we've gone through and gone into S/4HANA, let's talk about HANA. Now these products are two peas in a pod. They're both connected, but of course they're different layers. One is a database, the other is an ERP system. So how is HANA different from what came before it? So if you watch this entire webinar, and if you come away with just this piece of information, I would consider the webinar a success. So HANA uses two important features. So one is it is hardware, which is a combination of solid-state drives and memory to replace disks. And the second is a database structure that is customized for analytics. This is what is called a column-oriented design to the database, and it is optimized for analytics. There is also, in addition to there being two separate distinct parts of HANA, there's an important technical interplay between the database structure and also the hardware. And it relates to how queries are performed, and it essentially gives you extra capabilities for performance that did not exist before these hardware technologies came onto the scene. So let's go to the next theme. So what are the actual HANA performance differences? This is a greatly misunderstood topic in the area of HANA, and I think mostly because the marketing has been far more prevalent around what the reality is of HANA than information that's coming out of projects. And I have a lot of information that is coming out of projects, and normally that type of information doesn't get published. But the sort of top-level view on this is that the performance difference is not as generalized as is normally presented. The performance difference with HANA greatly depends upon the use of the application. Therefore the application, the type of application that uses that database. So some applications, they show large differences, and other ones show smaller differences, and some applications are mixed in that they perform one type of processing and then another type of processing, and so the result is a little bit more mixed. So there are other databases that are essentially similar to the design of HANA, and I think that's something else that's not really expressed very well in the marketplace. Other competitors do similar things to what HANA does, and these adjustments that are happening in hardware are known broadly, and the column-oriented database design goes back to the 1970s. It is not a new database design. It was actually one of the early competitors to the relational design, but the relational design ended up becoming more prominent for a variety of different reasons that made sense at the time. Okay, so let's move on to the next theme. So what has been the information communicated about HANA outside of SAP? So again, HANA suffers, if we take a look at it from the perspective of not being promotionally oriented, and we want to find out what the truth is, then we can say the study of HANA suffers from having really only SAP or SAP surrogates communicate information about it. And so if we look at who else really covers this topic, we could take a look at Gartner or Forrester, and I've read all of their material. And it's clear to me they don't have the resident technical experience to really understand HANA. And so they're probably not going to be the source in order to determine what is really the difference, what are the applicable areas. What they can do is they're good in the areas of surveys, and they of course have they talk to very large numbers of people, and so they can generally have a feeling for what's going on in the marketplace. But they also tend to interact really only at the executive level, and this means that some information doesn't really basically flow up to them. So let's move to 4. So what applications really fit with HANA? So I've already brought up the fact that the benefits of HANA change depending upon application and usage. So HANA is optimized for reporting and analytics. There is a current of information that's communicated that states that HANA is good for an ERP which is transaction processing, and it's also just as good for analytics, and it's good for it actually basically can be used for big data, which requires it being actually connected to a different type of database, such as a Hadoop. But the sort of conclusion is that HANA is really optimized for reporting and analytics. You will not see the benefits in other types of processing in the same way that you will see for analytics. And so this leads to some of the stories that come out about HANA. And some of the reports, for instance, about SAP CRM being ported to HANA really make very little sense in terms of the statements that are made by individuals about the performance increases from SAP CRM. That's just not really possible unless the application already was somehow greatly sub-optimized. And one of the pieces of evidence that I can point to for this is that if you look at all the other SAP CRM vendors, all the other CRM vendors, there's really not one of them that emphasizes databases on their website as a differentiator. And the reason for that is that that type of performance is just really not relevant for an application that's as lightweight as a CRM system. Okay, so let's move on to 5. So what are the related HANA products? This is probably one of the largest areas of confusion in the HANA space. And the reason for it is because of for really 2 different things. So one is that individuals have been proposing that HANA is much more than a database. And a reason why they're able to do this is because SAP has come up with so many different applications that have HANA in the name, but don't really have anything to do with HANA. And the examples I'll give you of this is the HANA Cloud Platform, which would be defined as sort of what's called a platform as a service. You have your HANA Studio, which is a development platform. You have a HANA Integrated Services, which is really an integration harness. And none of these 3 products, and there are others and there will be more in the future, have anything to do with HANA the database. All of these products can be connected to HANA, but that doesn't mean that they are HANA, right? And so we have to have distinctions between what is doing what in order to understand what is happening. And so if we look at it from a non-marketing viewpoint, we can say these are distinct applications. They connect to HANA. They may give HANA more value, but they are not themselves HANA. So the implications of the interactions between the various HANA products, if we want to call them that, is important to understand. And also, when interacting, for instance, with SAP account executives, it is very important to actually find out what are all the items that are required in order to make HANA work properly. And that's actually been a point of contention on a number of accounts that I'm in contact with. Okay, so let's wrap up. So S/4HANA is the greatest change ever to SAP's ERP system, right? So whether one loves it or hates it or thinks it's very innovative or doesn't think it's very innovative, there's no question that it is the greatest change. HANA's capabilities have to be matched to the particular application to determine the likely benefit. So if a company goes in and buys HANA and decides to put it in and is assuming that all of these sort of pearls of performance will come from the database, regardless of the application category or the type of processing that's performed, that company is going to end up being disappointed. So both S/4HANA and HANA introduce new complexity into the business, and it requires a lot of analysis. So I sort of, in a way, almost spend a lot of my time studying these 2 products and getting feedback about them and reading up on them and so on. And the issue is that there's so much material to cover that knowing IT departments, it's quite unlikely that an IT department is interested in setting up a research entity to basically keep up with what's going on with these 2 products. So there's a lot to know, and if decisions are made without really knowing different aspects, then it's very hard to have a successful implementation. So certainly, there's no doubt that there's more understanding that is necessary for companies that engage in S/4HANA and HANA. And this goes to anything from terminology, understanding all the terminology, understanding the terms that are being offered by SAP, understanding the implications that are involved when a purchase is made. So many companies did not know, or they do not know, that HANA comes with what's called indirect access implications. And so it's not so simple that simply replacing Oracle 12 with HANA, even if let's say that you're in favor, let's say the performance benefits are there. There are also other concerns that are contractual in nature that have to be determined. So there's a very much a multidimensional analysis that is required to come to a good outcome on these different items. Okay, so with that, I will turn it back to Hans.
Thanks, Sean. Very insightful. A long and windy road, if I might quote some favorite people from me from the UK. Very interesting. Some new elements for me to contemplate about. Back to you, dear audience. With Sean's expose in mind, I have another two polls for you. First one, what is your organization's current posture towards S/4HANA? Again, 5 options. You already actively engaged with S/4HANA implementation. You're committed to it, but not yet implemented. You're developing the business case at current, or you look a bit wider at all options that you have, or you have no plans at all at this point in time. And I give you another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Very mixed. Interestingly enough, in the audience, a big number, the biggest number, 31% would have no plans at all. 7% actively engaged. That is also quite low. And a lot of you are committed or developing the plans. Yep, thank you for that. We go to the next poll. What activities are your organization engaged in to support the planning for S/4HANA? Are you discussing this only with SAP analysts and service providers, or have you taken a purely internal assessment and planning approach? Maybe you're in an early stage research, or none of the above is applicable. I give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Hmm. 16% that are discussing only with SAP. Well, that is, when listening to Sean, maybe not the best way to do it. The majority is discussing it, or the largest group is discussing it with multiple sources, as Sean advised, and none of the above. So, yeah, could be the type of organization that you're in or any other reason. Thank you for that. Very, very useful for us to know. Okay, let's move to the next topic, and that is the risk and controls impact about when implementing S/4HANA. There's a lot to say about it, so I will just touch the surface on many topics in this webcast. If I summarize the central paradigm for S/4HANA, then I would call it its power to the end user. You can do a lot as end user. You can do that with 3 different lenses: design time, provision time, and at runtime. And just to give you an idea what is possible with S/4HANA is the example that you see at the right. You have at design time access to a field. At provision time, there's giving you a privilege to do that for a certain business unit and to select that data. And at runtime to move the value of that found data and use that in your Microsoft Office document. Quite a different paradigm than we know today. And that means that if you move from risk impact to controls impact, that this shifting paradigm from database access via an application layer, which is guarded by the application layer, to a direct database access will impact application controls, IT general controls, and many more things. I will go into a few examples of both application controls and IT general controls that you have to think about because they are impacted. First of all, the simple user access architecture changes dramatically. To the left, you see the current situation, how you work with your current ERP stack, and to the right, the two options that you will have with S4HANA, both S4HANA in a transactional approach in the middle and S4HANA in a more analytic approach. Quite different, as you see, and that means that your procedures and the processes around that should really be analyzed on their impact. As Sean already said, there are quite some changes in both the database and the transactional model, all under the header simplification, which means that in the current ERP stack you have, for instance, cost elements spread out over 4 tables and now moved in one table, or credit management in 5 or 6 different transactions moved to one transaction. And the impact is given in the yellow column to the right. It will mean that you have to look at your security controls, your segregating options, your sensitive access, because this is all changing. So even if the underlying roles are by and large the same, still all documentation and rules and whatever and reporting will have to be addressed. Another aspect is the whole database security change, and I showed you in an earlier slide already that it's all about privileges. Privileges becomes the new normal, and essentially it means that you give somebody a privilege to do something with a data object, and that can be very different based on the type of role that you play, from end user to developer. And of course, it also will give a different level of privilege, allowing you to do some things which are depicted to the right in the yellow column. All these changes from the gray, from the current situation to the new situation as depicted in the gray, have to be assessed from a risk perspective, and control perspective, and a monitoring perspective, and of course procedures and processes around it. If you go a bit deeper into the application control, just 5 examples on things that will change and need to be taken into account. It's really a glimpse of the new world, and of course everything that you see here can be changed. It is just work, and you need to plan for it. And moving from application control to IT general controls, again, 4 examples here. Absolutely not complete, and things also will change over time as the S4HANA offering matures and gets richer. So it will be a list that is, to a certain extent, a bit of a moving target. There is much more. So those are more little dives into the more technical elements around risk and control, but there are some wider risks around S4HANA that you need to think about and that you need to prepare for. And there's a new concept of asset accounting in there. Cash management is now an integrated component in the FICO core. You have options to do integrated business planning by transferring financial data via Excel into S4HANA, which opens up another access door, I would say, and another risk element. And of course, you don't have to forget your surrounding applications. We have management systems now, for instance, financial consolidation works differently. It's advertised that it is now all in the core system. Might be true or might be not, and of course it's your choice if you want to use that. You have feeder systems either from SAP or on the suppliers like Ariba, Coupa, Concur, SuccessFactors, that will not be included in S4HANA, but will interface or do already interface with S4HANA. But you have to think about the risks involved with that in case you want to have an end-to-end monitoring solution covering, for instance, your whole purchase-to-pay cycle from your supplier portal until the actual financial booking. And last but not least, think about your legacy systems. A large portion of the attendees said that they have other systems than SAP around, legacy or not. You have to do something with it. And of course, SAP ERP, as it is today, becomes a legacy itself, and probably you're not able to switch that off completely, that current landscape, by switching on S4HANA, apart from the discussion on running parallel for contingency reasons. So all risks can be addressed, and you can do something about it, but you have to prepare. So we want to give you a little agenda for your internal discussion, and we do that first by summarizing some takeaways that we have seen both from Sean's presentation and the observations that we made in the market. It is logical, yeah, that a 25-year-old code base comes to end of life cycle, and it is also logical from a commercial standpoint that SAP wants to own the database and that they want to become a platform company. So it's not weird that SAP ERP is replaced by something new. As Sean explained quite extensively, it's not a simple upgrade. It's essentially new install with data migration. You move to a new database-oriented paradigm, and don't forget that it changed your database platform skills that you have built up over years quite dramatically. And from a risk and controls perspective, it means reassessing what you do today around risk and control strategy, a redesign of your policies and controls, and implementing of a new controls framework in your tools that you are using. So what questions do we suggest you put on the table if you're involved in the discussion around S4HANA in your organization? Well, of course, there are business elements which are not specifically focused on S4HANA, but it is a business decision for every big ERP investment that you're planning. But really think about all the costs of the implementation, because as Sean advocated, it is essentially a new implementation, so you have to do a 360-degree check on all costs involved, from skills change to migration and operation skills. The hardware doesn't come cheap, so that becomes an element too. That hardware landscape will have to change, especially the customized components with new tables in S4HANA. There is a certainty that all your customized transactions have to change, maybe all your customized data tables. And the argument which any ERP vendor will state that the newest version will make your customizations largely obsolete is in practice something that doesn't have a stance. Impact on surrounding applications I talked about, and you really have to rethink from a risk management and controls perspective and put those questions on the table. What does it mean to have direct end user database access? And what does that mean on the rethinking our risk and controls architecture? And that's not only the impact on IT security processes, but also on the way internal controls and audit are thinking. So, thoughts for the road. Research, get independent insights, multiple market opinions, and then define the playbook for your organization. Assessment and road mapping, talk with all stakeholders, their positions, their perceptions. Make sure that you have factual assessment of all business case elements. and create your roadmap with your alternatives. And specific for your risk and control framework, map the factual status as it is today to what you think the requirements of the stakeholders will be in the future, as far as they can answer that already. Run an impact analysis and prepare for managing a hybrid current and new world around risk and controls, because you will probably have to live with both of them for quite some time. In summary, you have a house, you think of buying or building a new and better house, you plan, you design that, you calculate your money, the risks, you do that in many iterations, and then you start building. Because we all know that once you are building and you discover that you have forgotten something, the analogy of your customizations, for instance, then it will be costly. Mounting an extra wall socket is always very costly if it comes as an afterthought. Mounting a complete ecosystem halfway the building exercise is almost unaffordable. So S/4HANA is like building an office building and planning for that. Make sure that you have enough blueprints for it and that you take a 360 degree on everything involved. This brings us to the end of the presentation part of this webcast. I think we covered the agenda by starting with the big confusion, then Sean looking at the reality versus the marketing, me elaborating a bit on risk and controls impact, and giving you some takeaways for internal discussion and a thought for the road. We are exactly 2 minutes overrunning our 45-minute schedule. It is a large topic, and we had to stay, of course, a bit high level during this presentation. But we really would like to ask you to give us specific topics that we could address in more detail in either a follow-up webcast or conversations with you. And Sean and I are happy to engage with you further on that. So please contact Emma Taylor if you have ideas for follow-on topics, and she will make sure that we are made aware of it and that we respond. I will take time for one question, because I've seen a few coming by that are very interesting, and this is one, maybe Sean, you could answer this. This is a question. Our business case for S4 is largely based on moving 5 instances to one S4 instance, so 5 ECC instances to one S4 instance. We have very high volumes and transaction activity. How do we verify this is feasible? Could you answer that, Sean?
Sure, sure. I mean, it's a complicated question. It's not all that entirely different from the question of if you were to say the same thing with multiple ECC instances. You know, the proposal, as you can see from the earlier part of when I presented, you know, you can't simply assume that because you're going to have HANA and S/4HANA that every type of transaction processing or every kind of processing you're going to do is going to, you know, just be so fast that you can immediately consolidate your various ERP instances. So there's not really an easy answer to that question, except that you have to perform the analysis, and you have to know, you know, get into the details of where you can expect the performance differences with the new with HANA versus you know, versus the way that ECC used to work.
So essentially, you're saying do some focus testing.
Yep, that's right.
Yep. Thank you for that. We're now overrunning by close to 5 minutes, so I have a big number of questions which we can't answer in this webcast, but we will do as promised via email. I would like to thank you for your attendance of this webcast, and Sean, a big thank you to you for joining me in presenting this webcast. I hope it made sense to you. I hope you had some takeaways from it. I wish you a very pleasant continuation of this day. Thank you very much and see you next time.